My brother got a house for Christmas. My sister got nothing. And when I asked why my entire family exploded, what happens when the responsible child finally stops being silent, you're about to find out. Hi, I'm Emily. I'm 30 years old, and this past Christmas literally tore my family apart. Let me paint you a picture. My younger brother Jake got gifted a house. Not a down payment, not help with rent. An entire house. Keys deed the works. My older sister Olivia, she got absolutely nothing, not even a card. And here's the kicker. My parents genuinely thought they were being fair. You're probably thinking, okay, Emily, there's gotta be more to this story. Maybe Olivia's rich, maybe she's the family screw up. Maybe there's some logical explanation. Trust me, I thought the same thing. Until I watched my sister's face crumble in real time, surrounded by wrapping paper and fake Christmas smiles. See, Olivia's 33. She's been supporting herself since college, working as a freelance graphic designer. She pays her own rent, her own bills, and hell, she even covered Jake's car insurance last year when he was between jobs. Jake. He's 27, still living in our parents' basement, and has changed his college major 4 times. Sweet guy. Don't get me wrong, but he's what you'd politely call a work in progress. So when Dad stood up with those house keys grinning like he'd just solved world hunger, I knew something was about to go very, very wrong. How do you explain giving one child a $200,000 house while the other child, who's been doing everything right her entire life, gets to watch from the sidelines? That's exactly what I was about to find out. To understand how we got here, I need to take you back. Way back. Growing up, our parents, Linda and Mark, had this phrase they'd use whenever anyone questioned their parenting choices. Jake just needs a little extra support. They said it so often it became like a family motto. When Jake failed his driving test 3 times, Mom drove him everywhere for 2 years. Extra support. When he dropped out of engineering to try art, then switched to business, then psychology, then back to undeclared dad, kept writing tuition checks. Extra support. When Jake couldn't hold down his part-time job at Best Buy because, quote, the manager didn't understand his creative process, guess who helped with his rent? Olivia. But that wasn't called extra support. That was just Olivia being responsible. See the pattern here. Every Christmas told the same story. Jake would get the big-ticket items. The PlayStation, the new laptop, the designer clothes he'd specifically asked for. Olivia, she got practical gifts. Kitchen towels, a nice candle, maybe some fancy soap if Mom was feeling generous. I remember one Christmas, when Olivia was 28, she opened this beautifully wrapped box, thinking maybe this year would be different. Inside, a set of organizational containers for her apartment, the kind you buy at Target for $15. Jake, that same year, a brand new MacBook Pro because his old laptop was slowing down his creative workflow. Olivia smiled, said thank you, and used those containers for years. She never complained. Not once. But I noticed something that day. The way she held that container set just a little too long, staring at it like she was trying to decode some hidden message. The way she excused herself to the bathroom right after opening it. That was the first time I realized my parents weren't just playing favorites. They were living in 2 completely different realities. In their world, Jake was the struggling artist who needed nurturing. Olivia was the successful, independent daughter who had everything figured out. In the real world, Jake was a 20-something man-child who'd never faced a real consequence. And Olivia was drowning, working 60-hour weeks just to stay afloat, too proud to ask for help she'd never get anyway. But this Christmas, something felt different. There was this energy in the air like a storm building. Jake had been posting these cryptic Instagram stories all December. Big changes coming. Life's about to get real. Biggest Christmas ever, can't wait. Olivia saw them too. I caught her scrolling through his posts one night when I stopped by her apartment. She was smiling, but it was that smile you give when you're trying to convince yourself everything's fine. What do you think he means? She asked me. I shrugged. Probably got accepted to another program he'll drop out of in 6 months. She laughed, but her eyes didn't. Yeah, probably. I should have known right then. Should have prepared her somehow. But how do you prepare someone for having their heart ripped out on Christmas morning? Christmas Eve started like every other year. Same traditions, same chaos, same forced family cheer. Olivia showed up around noon with this beautiful handmade photo album she'd been working on for months. She'd printed and arranged every family photo from the past 5 years, added little handwritten captions underneath each one. The kind of gift that takes actual thought, actual time, actual love. I wanted to give everyone something meaningful this year, she told me while we were setting up in the kitchen. Something that shows how much our family memories matter. I was carrying my usual offering, 3 dozen homemade cookies in those fancy tins, plus a new camera lens I'd picked out for Jake. He'd been getting into photography lately, which was actually progress, considering most of his hobbies lasted about 3 weeks. The house was already buzzing. Uncle Pete was arguing politics with Grandma Ruth. Cousin Sarah's kids were screaming in the living room. Mom was stress cleaning counters that were already spotless. But Jake was different that day. Usually, he's this laid-back, go-with-the-flow guy who shows up in sweatpants and spends most of the day on his phone. This time, he kept checking his watch, kept glancing toward the front door like he was expecting someone. "You okay?" I asked him while we were arranging presents under the tree. "Yeah, totally fine," he said, but his hands were shaking a little. "Just excited, this Christmas is gonna be special." There was something in his voice. This nervous energy I'd never heard before. Olivia was in the corner quietly organizing the gift pile with that meticulous attention to detail she brings to everything. She'd wrapped her photo albums in this gorgeous silver paper with hand-tied ribbons. Even her wrapping was thoughtful. Dad kept disappearing to make mysterious phone calls. Mom kept asking if anyone needed anything, that frantic hostess energy cranked up to 11. Around 6 p.m., Jake pulled me aside. "Emily, I need to tell you something," he whispered. "But you can't say anything to Olivia, okay?" My stomach dropped. "What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. It's just..." He ran his hands through his hair. "Mom and Dad got me something really big this year. Like life-changing big. And I'm worried about how Olivia's gonna react." "What do you mean?" "I mean, they didn't get her anything like what they got me, and I know that's gonna hurt her feelings." The way he said it, so casual, so matter-of-fact. Like he already knew it was unfair, but had just accepted it as the natural order of things. "Jake, what did they get you?" He looked around nervously. "I can't say. But Emily, promise me you'll look out for her tomorrow, okay? I don't want her to feel bad." I stared at him. This sweet, oblivious man-child who genuinely cared about his sister but had never once questioned why he deserved more than she did. "Yeah," I said. "I'll look out for her." Boy, that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about that conversation, about the worry in Jake's voice, about Olivia's careful silver wrapping, and handwritten captions. What could possibly be so big that Jake was already apologizing for it? I had this sick feeling in my stomach, like standing at the top of a roller coaster right before the drop. Something's about to happen, but you're strapped in and there's no getting off. Christmas morning was 12 hours away. None of us were ready for what was coming. Christmas morning hit like a freight train disguised as a holiday. By 9 a.m., the living room was complete chaos. Wrapping paper everywhere, coffee brewing kids tearing through their presents like tiny tornadoes. The whole extended family was there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, grandparents. Classic Christmas morning madness. Olivia was sitting cross-legged by the tree. That same quiet smile she always wore during family gatherings. She'd already handed out her photo albums and everyone was making the appropriate appreciative noises. But you could tell she was nervous about something. I gave her the framed art print I'd picked out, this gorgeous vintage botanical illustration that matched her apartment perfectly. Her face lit up when she opened it. "Emily, this is beautiful. How did you know I needed something for that empty wall?" "Because I pay attention," I wanted to say. "Because I notice things." Jake opened his camera lens and actually hugged me. "This is perfect. I've been wanting to try macro photography. See, everyone was happy. Normal Christmas morning vibes. Then Dad stood up. He had this look on his face like a game show host about to reveal the grand prize. Mom was practically vibrating with excitement beside him. Everyone, Dad called out, tapping his coffee mug with a spoon. Before we finish up, Linda and I have one more very special surprise. The room went quiet. Even the kids stopped what they were doing. Dad reached behind the couch and pulled out this small wrapped box. Not big enough for anything major, just a little square package. He handed it to Jake, who was sitting on the ottoman, looking genuinely confused. "Open it, son." Jake unwrapped it slowly, carefully. Inside was a small velvet jewelry box. He opened it, and his face went completely white. "Are those house keys?" Dad announced, his voice booming across the room. "To the townhouse, on East Maple Street." The silence that followed was deafening. Jake stared at the keys like they might bite him. "I don't understand." Mom jumped in, tears in her eyes. "We bought it for you, honey. It's yours. Your first home." "The closing was yesterday," Dad added proudly. 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, nice little yard. Perfect starter home for a young man ready to begin his life. I felt like I was watching this scene through water. Everything slowed down, got muffled and strange. Jake was stammering something about being grateful but confused. Relatives were congratulating him, asking to see pictures, making plans to visit. And Olivia? Olivia didn't move. She just sat there holding my art print, staring at those keys in Jake's shaking hands. Her face didn't crumble. She didn't cry. She just went very, very still, like a deer that spotted a predator and is hoping it will pass by unnoticed. But I saw it. That moment when the last piece of hope she'd been carrying just quietly died. "A house?" she said softly, so softly I almost missed it. "You bought him a house." Nobody heard her except me. They were all too busy celebrating Jake's good fortune, planning his housewarming party, discussing mortgage details he wouldn't have to worry about. I wanted to scream. I wanted to flip the coffee table and demand to know what the hell was wrong with these people. Instead, I sat there watching my sister disappear right in front of everyone, and not a single person noticed. Not one. I couldn't stay quiet anymore. The words came out before I could stop them. "What about Olivia?" The celebration screeched to a halt. Everyone turned to look at me like I just announced I was joining a cult. "What about her?" Mom asked, genuinely confused. "She didn't get anything." "Emily," Dad said in that warning tone parents use when you're embarrassing them in public. "This isn't the time." "When is the time?" I stood up, my hands shaking. "When is it ever the time to talk about how Olivia gets treated in this family?" Olivia grabbed my arm. "Emily, don't. It's fine." "No, it's not fine." I pulled away from her. "Jake gets a house, a $200,000 house, and you get what? Nothing." The room was dead silent now. Uncle Pete was staring into his coffee. Grandma Ruth was suddenly very interested in her crossword puzzle. The kids had wandered off to play with their toys, sensing the adult drama brewing. Mom's face was turning red. "Olivia is independent. She doesn't need help like Jake does." "Independent?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You mean struggling. She's struggling, Mom, because she's never gotten help like Jake does." "That's not true," Dad interjected. "We've always treated our children equally." Equally. Now Olivia was standing too, and her voice was so quiet everyone had to lean in to hear her. "Dad, I've been paying my own way since I was 18. I worked 3 jobs in college while Jake got his tuition paid and a monthly allowance." "You were capable," Mom said defensively. "You didn't need our help." "I needed to know I mattered." Olivia's voice broke slightly. "I needed to know that if I ever fell down, someone would be there to catch me." Jake was still holding those keys, looking like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "I didn't ask for this. I didn't know they were doing this." "But you took it," I said, and I hated how harsh my voice sounded. "You've been taking it your whole life and never once questioning why." "Emily, that's enough," Dad snapped. "We're not discussing our private family decisions in front of everyone." "Private family decisions?" I was fully yelling now. You just announced Jake's house to the entire family, but discussing fairness is somehow private. Aunt Carol cleared her throat awkwardly. Maybe we should give you guys some space. No, stay, Olivia said suddenly. I want everyone to hear this. She walked over to Jake and looked down at the keys in his hands. I've been supporting you for years, Jake. Your car insurance, remember that time you needed grocery money? When you couldn't make rent because you quit your job to find yourself. Jake's face crumpled. Olivia, I'm sorry. I never meant for it to be unfair. I know you didn't. Her voice was gentle now, which somehow made it worse. But it is. She turned to our parents. I'm 33 years old. I've been freelancing for 7 years, never knowing if next month's rent is coming from. I've been alone through breakups, through panic attacks, through my car, breaking down, through every single crisis, because I learned early that asking for help meant being a burden. Mom started crying. We just thought you were so strong, so capable. I was strong because I had to be. Olivia's voice was steady now, matter of fact. And Jake was weak because you let him be. The truth hung in the air like smoke from a house fire, choking and impossible to ignore. I don't need the house, Olivia continued, but I need to matter. I need to feel like I'm worth more than kitchen towels and organization containers. Jake stood up suddenly, those keys clattering to the floor. I can't take this, he said, and for the first time in his life, he sounded like an adult. I can't live in a house knowing it cost me my sister. When Jake said those words, something shifted in the room, like a dam breaking but in slow motion. You're not losing me, Olivia whispered, looking at her little brother with tears finally spilling over. You could never lose me, but Jake was shaking his head. Yes, I am. I've been losing you for years and I was too selfish to see it. He picked up the keys from where they'd fallen and held them out to our parents. I can't take this. Not like this. Dad's face went through about 5 different emotions in 10 seconds. Confusion, anger, disappointment, and finally something that might have been understanding. Son, we worked very hard to make this happen for you. I know, Jake said, his voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. And I'm grateful, but not at Olivia's expense. I realized I needed to say something because this moment was either going to heal our family or destroy it completely. You want to know the really messed up part? I said, looking directly at my parents. I bought my own house when I was 26. No help from anyone. Worked double shifts, ate ramen for 6 months straight, slept on an air mattress for a year because I couldn't afford furniture. Mom opened her mouth to speak, but I held up my hand. And you know what? I was proud of that. I thought I was proving something to you. That I was strong, that I was independent, that I didn't need anyone. I walked over to Olivia and took her hand. But Olivia's been doing that for 15 years. 15 years of proving she doesn't need help while watching Jake get everything handed to him. We never meant for it to be like that, Mom said, and she looked genuinely broken. But it was like that, I continued. And the worst part is you convinced yourselves it was fair because Olivia never complained. Olivia squeezed my hand. I complained to Emily. Late at night, over wine when I couldn't hold it in anymore. She'd call me crying after family dinners, I said, wondering what she'd done wrong, why she wasn't worth investing in. The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking in the kitchen. Finally, Grandma Ruth spoke up from her corner chair. In my day, we called this playing favorites, and it was just as wrong then as it is now. Leave it to Grandma to cut through all the emotional noise and hit the nail on the head. Jake was still holding those keys, staring at them like they were radioactive. I want to earn something for once, he said quietly. I want to know that I deserve the good things that happened to me. You do deserve good things, Olivia said, walking over to him. But so do I. She wrapped her arms around him, and for a minute they just stood there, hugging while the rest of us tried not to cry. I'm going to give the house back, Jake said into her shoulder. No, you're not, she said firmly. But you're going to work for it. Get a job, pay Mom and Dad rent, prove that you can handle the responsibility. Jake pulled back and looked at her. And what about you? Olivia glanced at our parents, then back at Jake. I'm going to stop pretending I don't need anything. I'm going to ask for help when I need it, and I'm going to expect you all to show up for me the same way you show up for Jake. It was the most beautiful, terrifying moment of honesty I'd ever witnessed. After everyone stopped crying and hugging, we sat down and had the most honest conversation our family had ever had. I pulled out my phone and opened a notes app. Okay, I said, we're making a family agreement right now, a real one. Dad looked skeptical. Emily, we don't need to formalize this. Yes, we do, because good intentions aren't enough anymore. I started typing as I talked. First rule, no major financial gifts without discussing it as a family first. And I mean discussing, not announcing. That's reasonable, Mom said quietly. Second rule, if one child gets significant help, the other children get offered equivalent support. Maybe not the same thing, but equivalent value. Jake nodded. Like, if I get a house, maybe Olivia gets help with her business loan or something. Exactly. I kept typing. Third rule, we acknowledge effort and sacrifice, not just need. Olivia's been holding this family together in ways you guys never recognized. Olivia was crying again, but these were different tears. Relief tears. Fourth rule, she said, her voice stronger now. We stop making excuses for each other. Jake doesn't get a pass for being irresponsible, and I don't get punished for being capable. And fifth rule, Jake added, surprising everyone. I pay rent for the house, market rate, and if I can't make payments, I move out. Our parents looked like they'd been hit by a truck, but not in a bad way. More like they were seeing clearly for the first time in years. There's one more thing, I said, looking directly at Mom and Dad. Olivia gets an apology. A real one. Not, we're sorry you feel that way, but we're sorry we hurt you. Dad cleared his throat. He walked over to Olivia and knelt down in front of her chair. Olivia, I'm sorry. We hurt you badly for years. We took your strength for granted and we made Jake weak by always rescuing him. That was wrong, and I'm sorry. Mom joined him. I always saw how capable you were, and I thought that meant you didn't need us. But needing your parents isn't a weakness, it's normal, and we failed you. Olivia reached out and hugged them both, and honestly, I've never seen anything more beautiful in my life. Jake was holding those house keys again, but this time he looked at them differently. I'm keeping the house, he said slowly, but I'm going to earn it. I start looking for a real job tomorrow, and I pay you guys back for at least half of it over the next 5 years. Jake, you don't have to do that, Dad started. Yes, I do. I want to be proud of myself for once, instead of just grateful. 3 months later, Jake had a full-time job at a local marketing firm and was paying $800 a month in rent to our parents. Olivia used her first month's rent from Jake to finally take that business course she'd been wanting to take for years. And me? I started a family therapy with all of them because sometimes love isn't enough if you don't know how to show it properly. Our family isn't perfect now. We still mess up, still hurt each other's feelings sometimes. But we talk about it instead of pretending everything's fine. Last month, Olivia landed her biggest client ever. The whole family celebrated at her favorite restaurant, and Dad insisted on picking up the check. What's the occasion? The waiter asked. My daughter's success, Dad said proudly. All of my children's success. As I watched Olivia beam at that response, I realized something important. Sometimes the most expensive gifts aren't the ones that cost money. Sometimes they're the ones that cost your pride, your excuses, and your willingness to change. But those are the gifts that actually matter. Those are the ones that last. And sometimes, if you're really lucky, those are the gifts that save your family.